What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the MMA Buzz. Jon Jones has once again made headlines in the MMA world, this time for a decision that may be haunting him. Reports have surfaced that Jones previously turned down a staggering $30 million offer from the UFC to face rising heavyweight contender Tom Aspinall. Now, as the story unfolds, it appears the former light heavyweight king may be second-guessing that choice. Earlier this year, veteran MMA journalist Ariel Helwani reported that multiple sources confirmed Jones asked the UFC for a $30 million payday to take on Tom Aspinall. Surprisingly, when the promotion met his demands and put the offer on the table, Jones declined. Instead of accepting one of the most lucrative deals in UFC history, Jones announced his retirement from competition, a move that shocked fans and analysts alike. However, that retirement declaration seems to have been short-lived. Just weeks later, Jones began making noise about wanting to fight again, this time aiming for a spot on the highly anticipated White House UFC card. According to Helwani, this sudden shift is a clear sign of buyer's remorse. Helwani explained during one of his recent YouTube segments that Jones's actions suggest he regrets turning down the massive payday. He described it as puzzling behavior, retiring 1 week, then lobbying for a fight just days later. It comes across as someone who was offered a lot of money to fight Tom Aspinall, said no, and is now realizing the mistake. Helwani said, "I think he regrets it. I think he regrets saying no to the $30 million. The timing adds even more intrigue." Jones was recently spotted at the Video Music Awards, walking the red carpet with his longtime publicist Denise White. Helwani pointed out that during this appearance, Jones openly hinted that he was not done fighting, despite having previously announced his retirement. This public back and forth has left fans questioning his true intentions. From the fan perspective, however, the response has been lukewarm at best. Helwani noted that many supporters seem indifferent to the back and forth saga. "To be blunt, I just hear a collective 'we don't care' from the audience," he said. This is a stark contrast from earlier stages of Jones' career, when news of his return would have electrified the MMA world. The situation also raises questions about Jones' legacy and motivations. On one hand, Jones is widely considered one of the greatest fighters of all time, with an unmatched record of dominance inside the octagon. On the other, his recent indecisiveness and refusal of massive paydays have left fans and analysts scratching their heads. As of now, Jones insists he wants to fight again, possibly on the historic White House card. But the lingering question remains, did he make a costly mistake by walking away from the Tom Aspinall fight and the $30 million that came with it? Whether this regret leads to new negotiations or another surprising twist in his career is yet to be seen. What is clear is that the MMA community is watching closely, waiting to see if Jon Jones will finally step back into the cage or let one of the biggest opportunities of his career slip away for good. Before moving on to the next news, we have a quick request for you. We're always working to improve our content and truly value your support. If you could take a moment to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon, it would mean a lot to us. That way you'll never miss an update. Move on to another news. Dricus Du Plessis, better known as DDP, has made it clear that he intends to reclaim the UFC middleweight championship following his loss to Khamzat Chimaev. However, UFC commentator Joe Rogan doesn't believe that will ever happen as long as Chimaev remains at the top of the division. The two fighters met at UFC 319, where Chimaev showcased his world-class wrestling and dominant top control, dismantling Du Plessis in a one-sided performance. Despite entering the bout with confidence, DDP's game plan collapsed under the relentless pressure of Boers. His camp had assured fans that the South African would be prepared to neutralize Chimaev's grappling with takedowns of his own, but that never materialized. Chimaev secured 12 takedowns during the fight, while Du Plessis managed only one. The loss not only cost Du Plessis his title, but also raised questions about his ability to compete at the highest level of the division. In the aftermath, Du Plessis has promised to regroup and make another run at the championship, yet during a recent UFC Fight Companion episode covering the promotion's Paris card, Joe Rogan and Brendan Schaub cast serious doubt on his chances. Rogan emphasized the sheer level of the gap between Chimaev's wrestling and Du Plessis' ability to defend it. "There's just not enough hours in the day to make up that gap once you get to this level," Rogan said. "For Dricus, there's nothing he can do to ever beat Khamzat's wrestling. He's not 21 years old anymore. It's not as simple as bringing in Russian wrestlers and expecting to close that gap. It's too late." Schaub echoed Rogan's view, adding that while Du Plessis can certainly improve as a fighter, the reality is that Chimaev is extraordinary. Rogan agreed, repeating that Chimaev's skill set is so advanced that it sets him apart from almost everyone in the division. The discussion leaves fans with an interesting question: can Du Plessis ever bridge the gap, or is Rogan correct in saying the mountain is simply too steep to climb? Meanwhile, the middleweight division is heating up with other contenders looking to secure their shot at Chimaev. At UFC Paris, Nurmagomedov moved a step closer to contention by defeating Caio Borralho via unanimous decision. Many expected this win to solidify Chimaev as the frontrunner for the next title opportunity. However, Ariel Helwani recently suggested that the situation may not be so clear-cut. According to Helwani, if either Reinier de Ridder or Anthony Hernandez deliver an outstanding performance in their upcoming fight on October 18th at UFC Vancouver, they could leapfrog Chimaev for the next title shot. Both fighters have been steadily climbing the ranks, and a spectacular victory could push the UFC to reward them with the biggest opportunity of their careers. The middleweight division is now full of intrigue, with Chimaev cementing himself as the most dominant force at 185 pounds. The question is less about who gets the title shot and more about whether anyone can realistically dethrone him. For Rogan and Schaub, the answer is clear: Dricus Du Plessis will never be that fighter. Move on to another news. The world of combat sports has always been full of crossover rumors, especially when it comes to boxing legends facing off against MMA superstars. One of the biggest what-if scenarios in recent memory involved a potential clash between undefeated UFC champion Khabib Nurmagomedov and boxing icon Floyd Mayweather Jr. According to multiple reports, this fight wasn't just speculation, it was actually on the table, and Khabib shockingly turned it down despite the astronomical payday attached. Back in 2021, Khabib's manager Ali Abdelaziz revealed that the Dagestani superstar had been offered a staggering $100 million to face Mayweather in a boxing match. This revelation alone stunned fans and analysts alike, considering the financial lure such a fight would bring. The crossover bout could have rivaled Mayweather's historic matchups with Conor McGregor and Manny Pacquiao, both of which broke pay-per-view records. Recently, Khabib's longtime coach Javier Mendez doubled down on this claim during an interview with Hikmet Wiebe. Mendez confirmed that Khabib did indeed receive an offer to fight Floyd Mayweather in pure boxing without any wrestling or MMA elements involved. According to Mendez, Khabib seriously thought about it, but ultimately declined the opportunity. Interestingly, Mendez admitted he wasn't even sure if the proposal ever formally reached Mayweather's camp. What he does know for certain is that Khabib flat out rejected the idea. This decision highlights something Khabib has made clear throughout his career: money has never been his primary motivator. Despite the chance to make generational wealth from a single fight, Khabib consistently prioritized his legacy, discipline, and values over financial gain. His retirement in October 2020 following his emotional victory over Justin Gaethje was another example of this mindset. He walked away from the sport undefeated at 29-0, honoring a promise he made to his late father, even though lucrative opportunities continued to knock at his door. Mendez also shed light on Khabib's personality outside the cage, sharing a revealing story from 2017. At the time, Khabib wasn't yet champion but was already dealing with the demands of fame. He found himself exhausted by the flood of interviews and media obligations. Complaining to his coach, he admitted he wished it would all just disappear. Mendez responded with some tough love. "It's simple, if you want all of this to go away, just go out there and lose. Nobody will want to talk to you then." That perspective immediately clicked for Khabib, and from that moment on, he stopped resisting the grind that comes with being a superstar. This anecdote perfectly captures why Khabib refused the Mayweather fight. He was never chasing headlines or money, his focus was always on staying true to his principles and cementing his reputation as one of the most dominant fighters in MMA history. So while fans may always wonder what would have happened if Khabib stepped into the boxing ring against Floyd Mayweather, the reality is clear: Khabib didn't need that fight to prove his greatness. Move on to another news. French lightweight contender Benoit Saint Denis continues to ride a wave of momentum following his spectacular victory at UFC Paris. The 28-year-old fighter, known for his relentless pace and aggressive grappling, secured a second-round submission win over rising Brazilian prospect Mauricio Ruffi. Using his elite wrestling, Saint Denis forced a tap with a face crank, an emphatic finish that not only electrified the Paris crowd, but also raised serious questions about who he should face next inside the octagon. Immediately after the fight, Saint Denis made it clear that he wants to challenge a top 10 lightweight contender. While no bout agreements have been signed yet, one name stands out on his radar, and it seems the feeling is mutual. Matthias Gamrot, The former KSW champion and long-established top 10 contender appears to be the frontrunner for Saint Denis' next opponent. During his appearance on the MMA Hour with Ariel Helwani, Saint Denis openly acknowledged that Gamrot is at the top of his list. "It's a privilege to be in this division," he said. "There are so many exciting fights available for me. Anybody inside the top 10 would be a great opportunity. Of course, Matthias Gamrot is a very talented fighter. He's been in the top 10 for a long time, and it would be an amazing fight. I'm also looking at guys like Fiziev and Oliveira. If someone gets injured, I want to be ready to step in. I believe I'm back in the best version of myself, and I want to fight as often as possible and win as much as I can." Saint Denis' hunger for big-name fights reflects his rapid rise in the UFC lightweight division. In just a short span, he has transformed from an underdog prospect into a legitimate contender, and now he is chasing opportunities against proven names. Interestingly, Gamrot has already responded to Saint Denis' call-out. The Polish fighter, who recently cemented his place in the top tier of the division, didn't hesitate to show interest. On social media, Gamrot fired back, "If you want the smoke, let's go in December, BSD." This isn't the first time these two have traded words. Earlier this year, Gamrot publicly criticized Saint Denis for not accepting a fight when Joel Alvarez withdrew from UFC 315. Instead, BSD stayed on the card and fought Kyle Propolic, a decision that Gamrot felt was a missed opportunity. According to Saint Denis, however, he was never formally offered Gamrot at the time, but insists he would have taken the fight soon after. Beyond his own career, Saint Denis also shared his thoughts on the upcoming UFC heavyweight showdown between Tom Aspinall and Cyril Gane. Unsurprisingly, the French fighter is backing his countryman. "To be honest, I think we're finally going to have our first French UFC champion," he said. "I've spoken with Cyril, and I know he has the fire to become champion. He's an exceptional athlete, even in the heavyweight division. Over 5 rounds, I believe he's going to beat Tom Aspinall. It's going to be a very tactical and high-level fight, but I think Cyril can do it." With his confidence, his recent performance, and his willingness to face the best, Benoit Saint Denis has quickly become one of the most exciting names to watch in the UFC's lightweight division. If the UFC books him against Matthias Gamrot, fans may be treated to one of the most compelling lightweight matchups in recent memory. Move on to another news. UFC President Dana White is once again at the center of controversy after the release of the latest episode of UFC Embedded. This week, instead of focusing on the upcoming Noche UFC card, the UFC's official YouTube channel dropped an embedded series dedicated to the blockbuster boxing match between Canelo Alvarez and Terence Crawford. The move infuriated many fans across the MMA community, who felt White was once again using the UFC platform to promote ventures outside of mixed martial arts. Critics compared the situation to White's handling of Power Slap, his slap fighting league, which was heavily marketed through UFC channels despite having little to do with MMA. Many fans argued that this strategy has come at the expense of UFC fighters who actually need the exposure. For instance, Diego Lopes and Brian Ortega, who headlined Noche UFC, received almost no promotion through the UFC's main platforms. While the organization did release some smaller pieces of content, such as highlights of Lopes' past fights and videos of his community work, fans noted that there was no dedicated embedded series to spotlight the upcoming card. The frustration boiled over online, with fans voicing strong criticism. Comments across social media reflected widespread anger, UFC letting Netflix drop boxing embedded, while Diego vs. Silva gets no promo, Dana chasing that Saudi money hard, real fighters in our backyard are being ignored, Fire Baldy, absolutely embarrassing, the UFC is supposed to be an MMA company, not a boxing promotion. Meanwhile, Diego vs. Silva is getting zero push because Dana is chasing that Saudi check. Can Dana and the UFC promote the actual main events a little bit more? We've got Alex Pereira fighting for crying out loud, the guy who literally carried the UFC in 2024. The backlash didn't stop there. Fans also questioned why the UFC would blur the lines between its brand and other combat sports. Several suggested that under TKO Group Holdings, the parent company overseeing both UFC and WWE, boxing content should have its own dedicated channel. Why is boxing on the UFC channel? One fan wrote, "They use UFC to push boxing, Power Slap, and even BJJ instead of promoting their own fighters. It makes no sense." Some fans even accused the UFC of deliberately stacking the deck. According to them, the Noche UFC card was intentionally made weak in order to drive more attention to the Canelo vs. Crawford fight. While this is speculation, the lack of promotion for a major UFC card compared to the overwhelming marketing for boxing certainly fueled that narrative. To be fair, not everyone saw the crossover as a negative. Some argued that using UFC platforms to promote boxing could bring in new fans and grow combat sports as a whole. However, even those supporters agreed that the UFC fighters headlining Noche UFC deserved their own promotional push, such as an embedded series of their own. In the end, the issue boils down to brand identity. Fans expect UFC content to remain focused on mixed martial arts. By blurring the lines between sports, Dana White and his team have risked alienating loyal MMA followers who feel their fighters are being sidelined for outside ventures. The debate is ongoing, and it raises an important question for the UFC's future. Should the company maintain a strict separation between its MMA product and other TKO properties, or is this cross-promotion the new reality of combat sports marketing?